The signal arrived quietly, almost too quietly. For centuries, Earth had been ignored by the rest of the galaxy, a tiny blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Powerful empires monitored its broadcasts and classified its species as unstable, chaotic, and insignificant. Humans had been called Deathworlders, creatures who survived impossible conditions on a violent, unstable planet. Many thought Earth's species was too primitive to matter and the galaxy left them alone. That had suited humanity perfectly. Earth thrived in its quiet corner, building cities, exploring its own skies, and preparing quietly for the day the galaxy would notice them. But no one had noticed.
Not till the signal died.
It came in bursts across multiple channels, an ancient code almost forgotten. The SOS was unmistakable. It was a plea for help, but it was also a warning. The species sending it was in the final moments of extinction. The Tauren were a small alien civilization, peaceful by nature, known for trade and diplomacy. Their worlds were elegant, filled with shimmering towers and forests that glowed faintly under multiple suns. They had no armies, no fleets. And now the Vrax Dominion was burning their systems to ash. Across the galaxy, leaders and fleets intercepted the signal. Most ignored it. The Vrax were known for unmatched military power, a force of destruction that even the combined fleets of neighboring empires dared not challenge. Many civilizations calculated that interference would mean certain destruction, and so most turned away. Most left the Tauren to die.
Except Earth. When the signal reached the United Earth Defense Council, the response was immediate.
They had no time for debate. Within minutes, every council member voted unanimously. Humans would answer. No one else knew. No one expected it. The preparations were swift. Earth's fleets had grown quietly over decades, hidden behind asteroid belts, beneath oceans, and scattered across remote moons. Ships were designed not for display, but for survival and versatility. They were armored against radiation, maneuverable in asteroid storms, capable of traveling through gas giants' clouds and planetary atmospheres alike. Every design reflected centuries of living in hostile conditions, where humans had learned to adapt or die. The fleet that would answer the Tauren's call was unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Small, angular ships, bristling with weapons, supported by medical vessels and command ships, emerged from hiding. Their crews were not professional soldiers in the usual sense. They were engineers, scientists, and civilians trained to fight. They were humans, hardened by centuries of hardship and the deadly environments of Earth. The journey to the Tauren system was fast, but careful. Humans traveled silently, avoiding detection from patrols and satellites that might belong to the Vrax. They had no illusions about the challenge ahead. The Vrax Dominion's warships were enormous, elegant, and deadly. The Vrax were not reckless. Every strike was precise. Every maneuver was calculated. Their fleets were more than technology. They were art in motion. When humans finally reached the Tauren system, the damage was evident. Half of the orbital cities were gone. Smoke and fire twisted across the planet's surface. Entire fleets of the Tauren had been destroyed. Survivors huddled in underground shelters, their eyes wide with fear. They had never seen anything like the humans before. The first encounter was terrifying. A Vrax destroyer emerged from the warp lanes, a gleaming leviathan of metal and energy. It moved with deliberate grace, expecting surrender, expecting fear.
The humans did not comply. They did not hesitate.
Without warning, railguns fired. Energy lances ripped through the Vrax hull, splitting it in two. Shrapnel floated through space, reflecting the starlight, as the destroyer crumpled into pieces. The Tauren could hardly believe what they were witnessing. These humans, labeled weak and primitive by the galaxy, had just destroyed a vessel built for hundreds of crew members with unimaginable technology. But it was not just brute force. It was strategy.
Whoa!
Humans did not attack directly. They used the debris of destroyed ships to hide behind, circled to strike from unexpected angles. and jammed communications with pulses of electromagnetic interference. Every move showed a mind that understood war in a way the Vrax had never anticipated. The Vrax did not expect resistance. They were masters of intimidation. Other civilizations bowed or ran. Humans fought with the kind of fury that only a species that had survived the impossible could summon. They were fighting for more than territory. They were fighting because someone had called for help. As the battle continued, the Talaran began to see something they had never believed possible. These humans, the Deathworlders, were organized, disciplined, and unrelenting. They worked together as a single organism. When one ship was damaged, others adjusted positions to shield it. When the Vrax deployed drones, humans countered with swarms of their own, programmed and controlled with incredible precision. They had no fear of death because they had been tempered in environments far deadlier than anything in the galaxy. It was a lesson that the Vrax would learn too late. By the time the first wave of the Vrax fleet retreated to regroup, human ships hovered over the Talaran homeworld like a protective storm. The survivors, hidden in underground shelters, emerged cautiously, staring at the angular vessels that had just destroyed their oppressors. Their ambassador, a tall, luminescent being with delicate wings, approached the human commander aboard the flagship. "Why risk yourselves for us?" the Talaran asked. The human commander, a woman named Commander Alina Ree, looked at her and answered simply, without pride or boast, "Because you called." It was not the first time humanity had helped someone in need.
But it was the first time the galaxy had noticed.
Far beyond the Talaran system, other empires observed in disbelief. The broadcast signals of the battle spread rapidly. Some dismissed it as luck. Others began to whisper warnings. The so-called Deathworlders were awake, and they were dangerous, not because they sought conquest, but because they would not ignore a call for help. Meanwhile, on Earth, the fleets continued to mobilize. Civilian industries worked alongside military engineers, producing weapons, shields, and support craft faster than the galaxy considered possible. Soldiers, engineers, and scientists volunteered in numbers that shocked their leaders. Humanity had no illusions about the Vrax dominion. They understood the odds.
Woo!
But they also understood something else. Survival was not negotiable, and neither was helping the helpless. The Vrax were powerful, yes, but they had underestimated the human spirit, a species that survived deserts, oceans, ice, firestorms, predators, and disease could survive much more. And when that survival instinct combined with intelligence, adaptability, and courage, it became unstoppable. In the Talaran system, the first signs of hope began to bloom. Fires that had once consumed cities were now watched from orbit, ready to be put out by human technology. Civilians began to emerge from shelters. Communications slowly restarted. For the first time, the Talaran realized that the galaxy might not be the cruel, uncaring place they had assumed. Perhaps somewhere there were beings who would act not out of fear or ambition, but out of simple, moral choice. Commander Ree looked out from her flagship's bridge, staring at the devastated world below. She knew this was only the beginning. The Vrax would return. They would come with greater numbers, more firepower, more cunning. Humanity had made a choice, and now they must follow it through. The galaxy would see them soon enough. The Deathworlders had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same again. The human fleet did not pause. The Talaran system was a temporary sanctuary, but the Vrax dominion would not allow survivors to flourish. The signals of the approaching armada spread like ripples through space, and the humans knew that waiting would be fatal. Commander Alina Ree stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. Every dot could hide a ship, every shadow a weapon. Humans had never faced an enemy like the Vrax, but they had faced impossible odds on Earth before. Surviving was their nature. The fleet moved in silence, each ship aware of the other's position down to the centimeter. Humans had learned to work as one, a single organism spanning hundreds of kilometers of space. Smaller craft flanked the larger capital ships, scout drones moved ahead to map hazards, and support vessels hung behind to repair and resupply. There was no hesitation, no arrogance. Every action was measured, precise, and lethal. As they approached the outer edges of the Talaran system, the first Vrax patrols appeared. Sleek, black ships glided through the void like predatory fish, sensors glowing faint red. They scanned, detected, and transmitted warnings back to the main fleet. The humans had expected this, and their response was swift. Railguns roared, piercing the Vrax hulls with kinetic fury. Plasma turrets flared in response, but human ships were nimble, darting through asteroid belts and debris fields, disappearing and reappearing like ghosts. The Vax were unaccustomed to this style of fighting. Most civilizations surrendered when faced with the Dominion, or fought in straight lines, predictable formations that could be crushed with raw firepower. Humans did not fight like that.
Humans adapted, shifted, and used every environmental advantage. They forced the Vrax to maneuver constantly, draining energy and patience, exploiting weaknesses in the alien ship's rigid protocols.
In the Talaran orbital sector, a small group of human frigates engaged a Vrax destroyer squadron. The humans split into unpredictable patterns, weaving around floating wreckage and through debris storms left from prior attacks. One frigate launched a salvo of missiles which split mid-flight and struck 3 targets at once. Another frigate rammed the rear of a damaged Vrax cruiser using the momentum to breach its armor. It was chaotic, but calculated chaos. On board the Indomitable, Ree watched the battle unfold. Her tactical team called out maneuvers, each one anticipating the Vrax response before it could occur. She leaned over the display, her fingers tracing the projected paths of enemy ships.
"Divide and isolate the smaller vessels," she said. "Divide and isolate the smaller vessels," she said.
"Keep at a capital ships exposed," the Vrax faltered. Their formations, perfected over centuries of conquest, began to break. Frustration grew among their commanders. The humans were not only surviving, they were countering with innovations that no one had expected. When the Vrax unleashed energy pulses to disable human ships' engines, engineers aboard the frigates responded in seconds, rerouting power and stabilizing systems mid-combat. When the Vrax tried boarding actions, human marines countered with remote drone interceptors, cutting off boarding routes and striking with precision. Meanwhile, on the surface of the Talaran homeworld, civilians watched the sky flicker with energy discharges and explosions. Fear had dominated their lives, but now it mixed with awe. These humans, strange, primitive beings from a distant, ignored planet, were saving them. They fought not for glory or conquest, but because they had been asked to help. The idea was so foreign that some Talaran did not believe it could be real. The battle escalated as more Vrax reinforcements jumped into the system. Massive warships the size of small moons appeared from hyperspace, their hulls bristling with weaponry. The human fleet responded with a combination of artillery fire, electronic interference, and cunning ambush tactics. Smaller vessels infiltrated the gaps between Vrax cruisers, launching drones that disabled engines and communication arrays. Every loss the humans inflicted forced the Vrax commanders to rethink, but the human strategy was fluid, impossible to predict. Ree's communications officer reported a Vrax fleet moving toward the planet's equatorial surface. Civilians were still sheltering below, and any miscalculation could result in catastrophic casualties. "They're attempting planetary bombardment," the officer warned. Ree's eyes narrowed. "Not while we're here," she said. Orders were given instantly. Human ships moved into formation above the planet, forming a shield between the surface and the approaching Vrax firepower. Beam weapons fired in synchronized bursts, intercepting missiles mid-flight. Electronic countermeasures scrambled targeting systems, causing some Vrax weapons to misfire into empty space. On the planet's surface, Talaran families began to understand the true extent of human capability. Not only were they fighting the Dominion's fleet, but they were protecting the most vulnerable at the same time. Hospitals and shelters that had been at risk were shielded by human fire. The people watched, wide-eyed, as their saviors held the line. Despite their technological advantage, the Vrax began to recognize a disturbing pattern. The humans were not reckless. Every move had purpose. Every sacrifice was planned. The Dominion's commanders had faced countless civilizations in their long history of conquest, but none had countered with such resilience, precision, and moral determination. They were learning, often too late, that humans were different. Aboard one of the human command ships, Ree received a message from the Tolerant ambassador. "Your actions, they are beyond anything we imagined. Why do you risk yourselves so freely?" Ree looked at the stars, a calm determination in her eyes. "Because someone asked for help," she replied. "Because it is right. And because we will not watch the helpless die." The ambassador hesitated, trying to comprehend the simplicity and depth of that answer. No other species had acted so selflessly in the galaxy. Most fought for empire, for power, for survival of their own kind. Humans fought for justice, even when there was risk of annihilation. Hours turned into days. The battle raged in waves, with the human fleet adapting continuously. New strategies were tested in real time. Improvisation was the norm, and the Tolerans slowly began to coordinate with the humans, providing guidance about planetary hazards and enemy movements. This cooperation, born of desperation, further enhanced the humans' effectiveness. The Vrax, meanwhile, were growing desperate. Losses mounted, and the tactical flexibility of the humans confounded every protocol. They tried overwhelming force, sending multiple cruisers against single human ships, but each time they were outmaneuvered. The humans were everywhere at once, attacking weak points and disappearing before counterattacks could be organized. By the end of the third day, the Vrax were forced to retreat from the immediate system. Their capital ships limped away, heavily damaged. Smaller vessels scattered in panic, leaving the Palaran homeworld temporarily safe. The humans had won, but they did not celebrate. They knew the Vrax would return in greater numbers. They had only delayed the inevitable. Ree gathered her officers on the bridge. "We bought time," she said. "The Talaran are alive, and their system is intact for now. But the Dominion will regroup. They will come back stronger. We must be ready." The Talaran ambassador approached once more. You have no fear of death." Ree shook her head. "Fear exists for everyone, but survival, protection, and doing what is right, those are stronger than fear." For the first time, the Talaran realized that humans were more than survivors of a violent planet. They were a species shaped by adversity, capable of rising against impossible odds. They were warriors, yes, but also protectors, engineers, thinkers, and innovators. They were the sleeping giant of the galaxy, and now they had awakened. As the human fleet prepared for the next stage, repairs and reinforcements were underway. Engineers worked in zero gravity to patch hulls, recalibrate weapons, and upgrade sensors. Pilots and Marines trained and drilled, anticipating the Vrax return. Every human on every ship understood the gravity of what had begun. This was no longer a simple rescue mission. It was a statement, a warning to the galaxy. The Deathworlders were no longer just Earth's species. They were a force, united, capable, and morally unyielding. And when the Vrax returned, they would learn the full extent of what it meant to awaken the species that had survived every possible threat and emerged stronger. And far beyond the Talaran system, across the silent reaches of space, other civilizations began to notice the anomaly. Humans had acted, not for conquest, not for greed, not for ambition. They had acted because it was right. And that simple truth was dangerous in a galaxy that expected weakness from a planet like Earth. Commander Ree stood on the bridge, staring at the starfield. She did not know the full scale of the challenge that lay ahead, but she knew one thing. The humans had chosen their path. They would protect the helpless, face overwhelming odds, and fight with every ounce of strength and cunning they had. The Deathworlders had moved from legend to reality, and the galaxy would not forget. The Vrax Dominion did not take the defeat lightly. Across the black expanse of space, fleets were being rebuilt, reinforcements summoned, and weapons refitted. Their pride demanded retaliation, and their calculations underestimated one crucial variable. Humans did not fight like other species. In orbit above the Talaran homeworld, Commander Alina Ree watched the stars for any sign of movement. The first waves of the Vrax had retreated, but intelligence reports indicated the Dominion's main armada was mobilizing. Thousands of warships massive enough to blot out stars with their sheer size were moving through hyperspace toward the Talaran system. Every Vrax commander was determined, ruthless, and prepared to destroy anything in their path. The human fleet responded with methodical precision. Repair crews worked around the clock on damaged ships. Engineers rerouted power to weapons and shields. Pilots drilled through complex maneuvers again and again. Civilians trained as auxiliaries to assist medics, engineers, and communications officers. Earth itself had become a production powerhouse, sending reinforcements and supplies through hidden jump gates. Ree gathered her senior officers on the bridge of the Indomitable.
They will come in numbers we have not seen before.
We are outnumbered, but we are not outmatched.
Our advantage is speed, adaptability, and ingenuity. We fight as one.
That is how we survive.
The Vrax armada emerged from hyperspace, an ocean of black hulls glowing faintly with energy conduits.
Each ship was a cathedral of war, lined with turrets, missile banks, and shields that could deflect most attacks. But the humans did not flinch. The fleet formed a series of layered defenses with smaller ships weaving between capital vessels to create traps, confusion, and ambush points. The first salvo of the battle was terrifying. Vrax plasma beams streaked across the void, striking ships with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions flared as hulls burned, sending debris spinning into the surrounding space. Humans responded immediately. Point defense systems destroyed incoming missiles, shields absorbed energy pulses, and counterfire from human railguns tore into Vrax engines and weapon systems. The Talaran watched from their shelters and orbital platforms, fear mixed with hope. They had never seen such resilience, such coordination, or such moral courage. These humans were not reckless, they were determined. They fought not for conquest, not for glory, but to protect the helpless. Every strike, every maneuver, reflected careful planning, sacrifice, and courage. The battle evolved rapidly. The Vrax attempted to break through with overwhelming force, concentrating their fire on key human capital ships. The humans adapted. Smaller ships executed flanking maneuvers through asteroid fields, drawing fire away from larger vessels. Electronic warfare disrupted Vrax targeting systems. Engineers patched hull breaches mid-battle, rerouting power to critical systems. Humans did not fight in straight lines or predictable patterns. They were fluid, unpredictable, and relentless. A Vrax dreadnought attempted to force a passage to the Talaran planet's surface. It unleashed a barrage designed to obliterate the human defensive line. Rey watched from her command seat and gave the order, divert all power to forward shields. Prepare interceptors. Target the engines.
Human fighter craft swarmed the dreadnought, attacking in coordinated waves. Missile salvos targeted key points, while drones infiltrated hull openings to disable critical systems.
The dreadnought faltered, shields flickering under the combined assault. With a final railgun strike, the massive vessel lost propulsion, drifting helplessly as smaller ships disabled its weapons. The Vrax commanders were stunned. These humans had learned, adapted, and innovated faster than any simulation could predict. They responded to threats not as a rigid algorithm, but as a living organism, each ship adjusting to the actions of the others in real time. Their strength lay not in sheer numbers, but in the unity and ingenuity born of centuries of survival. As the battle continued, Ray received reports from Talaran observers. Civilians had begun to evacuate the remaining damaged cities under human protection. Evacuation shuttles moved through debris fields, guided by human navigators and shielded by coordinated fire from ships above. Hospitals and shelters were supplied, medical drones repairing injuries and stabilizing the wounded. During a brief pause in the fighting, a Talaran ambassador appeared on the command bridge via holographic feed. Your actions, they are beyond our understanding. Why do you risk yourselves so freely? Ree looked at the stars, calm but resolute. Because it is right, she said. Because someone asked for help. And because we will not allow the helpless to die if we can prevent it. The ambassador's eyes glowed faintly with awe. We have other species. They fight for themselves, for power, for survival. You fight for others. Ree gave a faint nod. We are survivors. We fight for life, for justice, and for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is who we are. The Vrax did not wait. Their second wave jumped into the system, larger and more organized than the first. Thousands of ships moved as one, aiming to crush the human fleet. Humans responded with coordinated counterattacks, using hit-and-run tactics, electronic interference, and layered defenses. Smaller craft disrupted formations. Medium frigates targeted weapons, and capital ships executed broad maneuvers to shield weaker vessels. Despite being outnumbered, humans inflicted heavy losses. Vrax ships burned in the void, their crew casualties high. Every engagement revealed new human strategies, rapid adaptation, unconventional tactics, and the ability to exploit even the smallest weakness. Engineers recalibrated weapons mid-battle, Marines launched boarding raids to disable critical systems, and every ship functioned as part of a larger whole. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy began to notice. Signals intercepted by other empires spread tales of the human fleet, their tactical brilliance, and their unwavering moral code. Humans were not conquerors. They were protectors. They were survivors. They were the Deathworlders, and they were awakening. The battle reached its climax near the Talaran homeworld. The Vrax capital ships tried to focus fire, hoping to break the line. Ree issued a final order. Focus fire on their command vessels. Protect the civilians. Do not lose focus. Human ships moved as one. Railguns tore through armor. Drones sabotaged engines. Fighter craft harried the Vrax from multiple directions. Every ship, every crew member worked in perfect synchronization. The Vrax capital ships faltered under the coordinated assault, their formations breaking. Some attempted retreat, but smaller human vessels cut off their escape routes. The Talaran cheered from orbiting platforms, though the victory was not yet complete. The humans had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Ree understood that the Vrax would regroup, strike harder, and attempt to destroy them next time. But the human fleet had proven something crucial. They were not fragile, they were not primitive, and they could withstand forces far greater than anything Earth had ever faced. As the remnants of the Vrax fleet retreated into hyperspace, Ree addressed her officers. We have bought time. The Talaran are alive. Their world is safe, for now. But the Dominion will return.
We must be ready. They will not forgive failure.
The Talaran ambassador approached again. Your people. They are remarkable. You have risked everything for us.
We do not deserve such sacrifice. Ray shook her head.
It is not about deserving. It is about choice, and we choose to protect life, even when the odds are against us. That is what makes us who we are. Human ships regrouped, repairing and resupplying. Every individual knew the cost of what lay ahead, but they also knew the value of what they had achieved. The galaxy had begun to watch, and whispers of Earth's might spread from one civilization to another. The label Deathworlders no longer meant weak or primitive. It meant cunning, resilient, and morally unyielding. As humans prepared for the next engagement, they understood something vital. The galaxy expected them to fail. But humans had never been ordinary. They had survived deserts, oceans, ice, firestorms, predators, and disease. They had adapted, learned, and grown stronger. They were ready to face a galaxy that had always doubted them. Commander Ree gazed at the Talaran homeworld below, scars of battle visible across its surface. She knew the Vax would return in greater force. But humans would be ready. The Deathworlders would not hesitate, would not falter, and would not fail. The galaxy would soon learn a simple truth. Humanity did not fight for empire, for power, or for glory. They fought for what was right, and that made them unstoppable. The Deathworlders had mobilized, and there was no turning back. The Vrax Dominion did not forget. Across the black expanse of space, warships surged from hyperspace, their numbers dwarfing anything the humans had seen. Thousands of vessels moved in perfect formation, bristling with weapons, shields glowing ominously. Their intent was clear: crush the human fleet, destroy the Talaran homeworld, and send a warning to any species that might think to interfere with the Dominion's plans. Commander Alina Ree stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the approaching storm. She did not flinch. The humans were outnumbered, but not outmatched. Every ship had been repaired and upgraded. Every crew member was trained, disciplined, and ready. Humanity had faced impossible odds on Earth: blizzards, storms, predators, disease, and war, and survived. The galaxy had never seen what humans could do when they fought for what was right. Ree's tactical officer projected the enemy formation across the bridge.
They're moving fast, concentrating firepower on our forward line.
If we don't respond, they'll break through to the Talaran cities. Ree nodded. Prepare layered defenses. All frigates and destroyers move into flanking positions. Capital ships form shield perimeter around civilians and critical infrastructure. Fighters swarm and distract. Drones sabotage their engines and weapons. We fight as one. Nothing will break our line. Here, the Vrax fleet opened fire, energy beams streaking across the void. Explosions flared as shields absorbed hits, but some ships were damaged. Human crews reacted instantly. Point defense systems destroyed incoming missiles. Engineers patched hull breaches mid-battle, and weapons recalibrated to exploit weaknesses in the Vrax formation. Humans did not retreat. They advanced. Small vessels darted through asteroid fields and debris storms, striking at engines and weapons systems, then disappearing before the Vrax could retaliate. Larger ships fired coordinated barrages to protect the weaker craft and keep the enemy off balance. Each attack was precise, purposeful, and morally guided. No unnecessary destruction of civilian targets, only the military forces of the Dominion. The Vrax were unprepared for this kind of warfare. Their centuries of conquest had taught them domination through brute force and predictable tactics. Humans did not fight predictably. They adapted constantly, improvising in real time. When the Vrax adjusted shields, humans altered frequencies. When drones were deployed, humans countered with swarms of interceptors. Every move was a lesson in adaptability, creativity, and courage. On the Talaran surface, civilians watched with awe as humans held the line above them. Evacuation shuttles moved steadily, guided by human navigators. Medical drones attended to the wounded, while engineers stabilized damaged facilities. The people realized something remarkable. Humans fought not only to defeat their enemy, but to protect the innocent. Their morality was as sharp as their weapons. Ree's communications officer reported an incoming Vrax dreadnought attempting to bypass the defensive perimeter and target the evacuation routes.
It's massive, Commander.
Shields are nearly impervious to our standard weapons. Ray's eyes narrowed. Then we adapt. Prepare the auxiliary energy cannons. Deploy every drone swarm. Fighters hit from multiple vectors. We do not fail. The humans moved with coordination that seemed impossible. Drones infiltrated the dreadnought's hull, disabling engines and weapon arrays. Fighters attacked from unexpected angles. Auxiliary cannons fired in a pattern designed to exploit shield gaps. The massive vessel faltered, its momentum lost, drifting helplessly as human forces disabled it further. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, human ingenuity continued to shine. Engineers recalibrated railguns mid-combat, creating new firing patterns that pierced previously impenetrable shields. Commanders adapted formations in seconds, forcing the Vrax to react, never initiate. Smaller craft executed daring boarding actions, disabling critical systems on larger ships. Every strike was a demonstration of human resilience and strategy honed over centuries of survival. The Vrax Dominion's commanders grew frantic. Losses were mounting at a rate they had never experienced. Their calculations, once infallible, failed to predict human adaptation. Every tactic, every maneuver, every strategy they had used for centuries was countered by creativity, intelligence, and courage. For the first time, the Vrax realized that humans were not just another species. They were a force of nature. Ree received a holographic message from the Talaran ambassador. Commander Ree, your people, they are beyond belief. How do you fight with such precision and morality at the same time? Ree looked at the stars, calm and unwavering. Because it is right. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is who we are. Survival alone is not enough. We fight to protect, to save, to defend. That is our strength. The Vrax fleet pressed harder, attempting a coordinated strike on the humans' main defensive line, but humans anticipated it. Capital ships shifted, creating overlapping shields. Frigates and destroyers flanked the Vrax, drawing fire away from weaker vessels. Swarms of drones disrupted targeting systems, and fighter craft harried enemy ships from multiple angles. Every human ship acted as part of a single organism, a network of minds, strategy, and courage. The battle reached its climax. Human railguns tore through Vrax capital ships, disabling engines and weapons arrays. Drones infiltrated command centers, cutting communication lines. Smaller craft executed daring maneuvers to force Vrax ships apart, isolating them from the fleet. Every strike was precise, calculated, and morally guided. The humans did not aim to destroy indiscriminately. They aimed to neutralize threats and protect lives. The Vrax realized something terrifying. Humans understood total war, but they fought with restraint. They could annihilate the Dominion if they chose, but they focused only on what was necessary. Every move demonstrated intelligence, morality, and courage. They were not conquerors. They were protectors. The Talaran watched as their world was defended not by gods or miracles, but by humans. Ships that were once labeled primitive outmaneuvered vessels designed for centuries of conquest. Humans sacrificed, adapted, and innovated in ways that seemed impossible. Their courage inspired hope, and their morality inspired awe. In a final coordinated strike, humans disabled the remaining Vrax command vessels. The Dominion's fleet began to break apart, retreating in disarray. Casualties were high. But the human fleet had proven its dominance. They had not conquered, they had defended. They had not killed indiscriminately. They had protected. They had not sought glory. They had answered a call for help. Ree addressed her officers. This is only the beginning. The Dominion will not forget this day, but neither will the galaxy. We have shown that humanity does not bow, does not surrender, and does not ignore the helpless. Prepare for repairs, reinforce defenses, and coordinate with Talaran leaders. We fight when necessary.
but we fight for what is right.
The Talaran ambassador approached once more.
Commander Ree, your people, they are legendary. The galaxy will remember this day. You have done more than save us. You have changed everything.
Ree nodded, her gaze steady. We fight because it is right.
That is all we have ever done. And the galaxy will learn that Earth's people are not to be underestimated, not because we seek war, but because we honor life. Far beyond the Talaran system, signals from the battle spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations previously indifferent began to take notice. The word Deathworlders spread no longer a label of weakness, but of resilience, intelligence, and moral strength. Humanity had awoken, and the galaxy was watching. The Vrax dominion had been defeated, not through sheer numbers, not through arrogance, but through adaptability, courage, and an unwavering sense of right and wrong. Humanity had demonstrated what it meant to survive and to protect. The galaxy now understood that Earth's people were not to be trifled with. Commander Ree stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, staring at the Talaran world below. Scars of battle marred its surface, but life persisted. Humans had proven their strength and their morality. They had answered a call for help, faced overwhelming odds, and emerged victorious. The Deathworlders had not sought war. They had sought justice, and the galaxy would never forget it. The stars were silent again, but not for long. Somewhere, out there, other civilizations were recalculating, reconsidering, and wondering if they had underestimated the species that had survived every impossible challenge thrown at them. Humans had awakened, and they were watching. The galaxy would never be the same.